Welcome back. You guys were so enthusiastic about my Russian buttercream, I wanted to share this delicious variation, which is my recipe for chocolate Russian buttercream. So it's just as easy to make as my regular Russian buttercream, but obviously includes a little bit of cocoa. So we start off by adding 2 sticks of unsalted butter into the stand of our mixing bowl, and we are using our whisk attachment to mix this for at least 5 minutes until we've incorporated a significant amount of air into our butter and it changes color. So you know that it's ready when it's increased in volume and it's super light in color, just like this. It's also really important that your butter is at room temperature so that you can incorporate enough air into it. Next, I'm adding 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Both of these ingredients are optional, but they do add depth of flavor. Next, we're adding in 1 cup of sifted cocoa powder. It's really important that you sift it just so that it's easier to mix in and you don't have clumps of cocoa in your finished frosting. I also want to note that you should slowly mix this. If you try to mix it in too quickly, you're going to get clouds of cocoa, just like you saw there. And I also like to use my rubber spatula to scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl just to make sure everything is getting incorporated. Next is time to add in some of the sweetened condensed milk. So we're adding in 1 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk. It doesn't matter what brand you use, but it is important that you add it in 3 to 4 installments. If you try to add all of it at once, it can cause your frosting to break because the butter needs a little bit of time to be able to absorb all of that liquid. Once you've added in all of your sweetened condensed milk, if your frosting isn't the right consistency like mine here, it looks super thin and soupy, right? Like it's not keeping its shape. You can pop it into the fridge for 20 to 30 minutes, whisk and all, and then whip it up again after it's had some time to cool down a bit more, and it should keep its shape. Now the reason this happened to me is because my buttercream was sitting out for a while under hot lights and the butter just got too warm. So don't worry if that happens, it just means your butter might have not been quite properly at room temperature, but you can always fix it. So now it's time to get that frosting into a piping bag so we can add it to some of our chocolate cupcakes. I like to use a tall cup to help me fill my piping bags, and I'm using a Wilton 1M tip here, which is an open star tip, to create this frosting design. So I'm just piping some big swirls on top of my cupcakes, but that's because I really love frosting. If you don't like quite as much frosting on your cupcakes, you could always stick with a smaller swirl or just make a buttercream rosette on top of your cupcakes. I'm also topping these with some chocolate sprinkles, which seemed fitting, but you can really get creative with the decoration and the frosting tip that you use, or use whatever you have on hand. One thing to note is that if you are piping a bunch of cupcakes with this frosting, the heat from your hands can warm up the frosting and make it a little bit thinner. So if you notice that happening, just pop your piping bag into the fridge for a few minutes to help it cool back down and become a bit thicker and a bit more stable. In the end, I decided these needed a little pop of color, so I added some rainbow nonpareil sprinkles, and then it was time to dive in. I can't even pretend like this is the taste test because I obviously licked the whisk attachment as I made the frosting, but this frosting really is so delicious. The cocoa really plays well with the caramel notes in the Russian buttercream from the sweetened condensed milk, and it really is a match made in heaven. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to make this chocolate Russian buttercream, the recipe is up on Chelsweets.com.